Hello, everybody, and welcome to Making the Most of Data Governance panel. Can everyone hear me okay? Hands up if you can hear me. Excellent, good stuff. That's a very, very, very promising start. So I'm Andy Steed. I'm Content Director of Big Data London. So there's two golden rules being a Content Director. One of them is don't ever go in a session yourself. And number two is if you ignore number one, don't do that at the end of the day because your brain's going to be absolutely fried. So we're looking good for this panel. I'm very excited to welcome four fantastic panelists. As is customary in this sort of situation, I'm going to ask each one of them to introduce themselves and how they got into data governance. We'll go in order, Tariq, for this one.
Thank you. So hi, I'm Tariq Bhatti. I'm the head of data and analytics for One Housing. Can anyone hear me? Yeah? All right, cool, because some of you look like you can't hear me here. Sorry about that. Anyway, talking again. So, hi, I'm Tariq. I'm the head of data and analytics for One Housing. I've been a dataholic for the last 19 years. Yes, 19 years. And I have held nearly every position in terms of data, from being a data analyst to a data steward to a data architect, a DBA. Everything you could think of, I probably have done it before. And what really interests me with data governance is basically that without data governance, you won't have data at all. Well, you will have data, but it won't be so good, as they would say, yeah? And I will hand it over to Helen. Helen, over to you.
Can everyone hear me? I did good. I think we should all just do that to start. Hi, I'm Helen Cullis. I am the data governance lead at Monzo Bank. I've not been in data governance quite as long as you, maybe, but I've been in data my whole career. I started in medical research and clinical trials. We didn't really call it data governance, we called it not killing the patient. And then I moved into higher education regulation, and now I'm in financial services. And I sort of blame/thank two people for getting me into this. One is Nicola Ascombe, who's going to be here doing a session tomorrow, and another is Alex Lee, who is a big data governance person in the higher education world. So yes, without them, I would not be here. Jennifer?
Hello, thumbs up. Yeah, you can hear me, right? Good. So I'm Jennifer Agnes. I am the managing director of the Cynozure group in the US. We are a data strategy and analytics consultancy. We do a lot of stuff to help people get their data strategies in line and actually then implement them. I'm sort of an accidental data person, like a lot of us may be. I started in risk management. I spent about 20 plus years at GE Capital, and then I stopped counting the years. So if you come see me tomorrow, I'm going to say the same thing. I stopped counting after about 20 or 25. I'm not counting anymore. But what I found out was, as a risk manager, you can't make a lot of really good decisions if you don't have really good data. So that's kind of how I ended up in data management and data excellence, and had roles at Credit Suisse as the Chief Data Officer for Risk and Finance, and then as well as the first group Chief Data Officer for Schneider Electric, which is a French energy management company. And now I've left the corporates and joined the consultancy space, and it's a very nice experience. So I'll turn it over to you, Sai.
Thank you, Jennifer. I hope everybody can hear again. One more thumbs up. Wonderful. Sorry for the bass voice. That's my natural voice. So my data governance, or this journey with data, started at a very young age of 19. Even before I finished my college, I got a job opportunity, so I started working with data alongside. Started doing roles where I was doing more about MBM, MDM, understanding more about the data, metadata, how we can do an architecture around it. So 15 years I spent with a company called Commvault. For those in data protection, they understand what Commvault is and what we do. From there, I moved on to OneTrust, understanding how important and how powerful it is when it comes to data governance. So from data platforms, which has always been a journey or part of my life, I'm now into data governance, and here to give you an insight into how powerful it is and why is it so important. So I'll pass it over to Andy to take it further.
Yeah. So secondly, and I know this is a bit of a thorny point for everyone, what should we understand by data governance? What should we understand by the term data governance? I'm going to pass that straight over to Jen.
Because he sees me smirking. Because he knows we're either all going to get up and walk out and stop calling it data governance and really talk about data excellence and data management. Because it is probably the hardest thing to get done and convince people to do is actually control, govern, manage, and do it well across your entire organization. I'll start with that and say that if you get it right, and Tariq, you can jump in here, you kind of work yourself out of a job because it becomes part of BAU and how you operate your entities and how you operate your business. So I really think making sure that everybody fundamentally sees what their role is in managing data for an enterprise is much better than saying you've got to do data governance and data management because of regulatory reasons or whatever those rationales or those reasons are.
That's absolutely right. So, I rather refer data governance to not data governance in itself, because I refer it to like a Fight Club. So if anyone watched the Fight Club movie, there were rules about Fight Club. You don't talk about Fight Club. And it's the same with data governance. You don't really talk about data governance. You really enact on it. You actually put the processes and listen to the people to make sure that you can protect the data, and as we will talk about policies and all of that, but that's boring. People are human. Humans are inquisitive. They're able to circumvent processes that you think that they will able to follow. That's what humans does, because they just want to go and get the job done. But here, as data people, we know the value of data. We understand what it means to have good data versus what's bad. We don't want to be there working with spreadsheets and everything else and go, oh my God, I've got this report to do and I have to do this, correct all this work just to do this report and everything else. And then we have stands here that are talking about ML and AI, but the fundamental of all of this is actually getting your data right. And that's what data governance is all about. But we're not going to talk about data governance.
We're going to
talk about Fight Club. So that's what I'm going to say. There you go.
Helen, you prefer?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with my fellow panelists. I always say the data part of my job title puts the non-data people off, and the governance part puts all the data people off, and basically no one likes me. This isn't true. I work incredibly hard to make sure people do. To the extent that with my team, I say, I want you to go out in the business, and I want you to have really positive interactions. Try and always go into your meetings smiling and make them associate us with positivity, because we're starting from quite a bad brand level here. So let's try and kind of convince them that data governance is not dull, it's not dry, it's not boring. Because if you're stuck with the name because that's what your company, for very great reasons, wants to call it, you just kind of have to go with it. But fundamentally, data is your business.
Yes.
I remember talking to my CTO actually and saying, the tech and the data are separate assets because you could sell them separately if we really wanted to. And despite him being the CTO, I said, that technically we could run the bank without the tech. It wouldn't be a great bank, but we could still run the bank. Without the data, you just couldn't. And then that was sort of the start of trying to get the realization going, okay, wow, the data really is our business. And it is. So treat it like it is your business.
For me, governance is completely understanding what kind of data you have and break it down from discovery to cataloging, both the elements. So first you need to identify what you have, and from there, what is that you want to do once you've identified what you have. So if you're not adding that second question to it, but just understanding what you have, then it's again half-baked cake. So governance is, in my view, is broken down into two elements: cataloging and also discovery. Discovery being the primary element to understand what you actually have, and then add classification or enrichment to it.
And I'm going to ask the second part of this question. So we're making the most of data governance here. Do we just do more data governance? Is that the best idea? Do we govern everything? Do we govern all the data? Do we just now we've got a plan, govern everything, or is that a step in the wrong direction? I'll go with you, Helen, because it seems like
if you had infinite time and money and infinite buy-in, sure, go ahead. No, you've got to be practical about this. The example I usually use is that this is a continuum. The amount of data governance you levy over something, a data domain, depends on its criticality to the business. So, for instance, the information that you hold internally about what to put in which recycling bin in the office, you don't need to put full-on data governance. You don't need sort of data owner and data quality checks in place on that. But I work in a bank, so I tend to sort of talk in terms of regulatory reporting. You pretty much want to make sure what you're sending the FCA and the PRA are pretty accurate. So that's where you would want to concentrate your focus. And also, a lot of the time, you're starting from scratch, so you've got to chunk it up, you've got to make it manageable. If you try and boil the ocean, as the phrase is often used, you won't. You'll boil a tiny teaspoon, and then that teaspoon actually won't be any use anymore. You've got to chunk it down and make it manageable and do it iteratively, because you will not have infinite money, infinite time, and infinite people thrown at you for this.
Yeah. No, totally agree with you there, Helen. So in terms of actually chunking up the work and everything else, normally you would go to your directors, go to your key stakeholders and see what's value for them. You know, what is the data that's driving their KPIs? What is the data that's keeping them awake at night? What is it that is in a regulatory term that needs to be monitored? Because those are the sort of things you need to prioritize before you prioritize everything else. Because if you take care, it's like if you take care of the penny, the pound will look after itself. Yeah. So it's the same thing with your data. You know, you have layers upon layers upon layers of data, but you need to take care of your fundamentals, and the fundamentals is what you need to look at in terms of your company. And as Helen said before, you could take away everything else, but if you leave the data behind, the data is the business. Yeah, but it's depending on what data you want to focus on to drive that business to bring the biggest value. And that's what you need to try and focus on as much as you can. Jen, have you got anything
I would
to add to that?
Yeah, I'd add that I'd go even a little bit further than talking about data to my stakeholders. I'd actually have a conversation with and financial services is one thing. I spent a lot of time in financial services, but also in manufacturing, talking to the customer service center and finding out what problems the customers are having or what they're hearing about. You know, it could be invoicing, it could be problems with bills, it could be problems with delivery, packaging, weights, and all this kind of stuff. They're not getting the stuff that they ordered, etc. And I would start with those business problems and then see if there's a root cause in there that's related to data that actually cuts across many different problems, and then try to solve it from that perspective. And then you're really focusing on the creation of reusable data assets, so that then they can be used by other teams and other purposes and other functions across the enterprise, describing what its use is for, how it's used, who's using it, what the definition is for. Because what often happens is people pick up data because they can get it, and it wasn't actually fit for the purpose they wanted to use it for, and then they blame the data team because you did it wrong.
Absolutely.
You didn't, and you don't want to. That's the way to stop the Fight Club,
Yes.
right? Thing. Like, you don't want to have those arguments. You don't want to get in a conversation of whose data is right. It's more about what is the business problem or operational problem you can
Yes.
solve, and then detect the root cause, probably a data problem, and then how do you go about fixing that? And that might be through better cataloging, better definitions, better governance, better ownership, because the ownership piece is a big challenge to get people to step up and actually say, I'm accountable, I can help you get that definition clear, I can arbitrate any of the concerns or different opinions, and actually potentially tell you whose data is right for that particular use. So I go a little bit further into the actual operating problem, and
Absolutely.
then detect, and then detect.
And of course, I
That's
echo.
soldier stuff.
Yeah. So I echo with everybody here on the panel. Yeah, absolutely. If you have the right set of data, or if you have abundant amount of data without the right direction or without the right element to it, then it's useless data. So always find the gaps where the data elements are, and then try to add ownership to that, add enrichment to that, add classification to that, so that you're making data most usable or putting it to efficient and effective use. Otherwise, it's lots of data which is just going unused or put into the wrong hands. What do you have?
Perfect. So obviously, where we are, we're in a big hall. We're in a big hall with lots and lots of solutions where everyone can see from all types of different solutions for all types of different data problems. So my question is going to be about tools. Can you do data governance without tools? Is it sensible? I'm going to direct them first to Sai, who obviously represents a market-leading software company, OneTrust. But
Thanks, Andy.
Can people do this without tools such as yours?
It's like going through the shopping list of my wife, which is pretty small. No, not kidding. But yeah, realistically, no. Reason being, or let me propose this question to the audience. Can anybody tell me, not guess, but tell me what's inside the container? Right? We can't. Even if we were to guess, we will say it's either tea or coffee or some liquid that's in the container. Right? Apply the same logic to your database. where you have millions of records, millions of files, or millions of entities, entries, elements that are in the database, or bunch of files, or even Excel sheets for that matter. If somebody needs to do it manually and identify every nook and corner or a field like a name or a credit card or anything within the data sources that you have, that can be done, but it's going to take you like a million years to go through each one of them. And if these files are getting updated every day or every week, then your job is endless. So to answer that question, without any prominent tools or good tools, you will not be able to do that, because that's where your automation and governance and discovery, all these elements come into play. So if I have million records sitting in, let's say, some kind of database, for example, a Microsoft SQL database, I don't want to scan through every little field or table or schema. What I'm going to do is run the discovery, which is going to scan my system and populate all the information for me. Then it automatically throws the numbers back at me saying that we have found 400 credit card numbers or 500 email addresses or 600 first names or PIN codes or postcodes, anything and everything that you want to search. Likewise, you can also search for everything in the database. So if I acquired a new company and I have lots of data trickling into my organization and I have no clue what's in the database, I don't have the time to sit down and go through each one of the record. I'll simply do a scan, discover all the elements, and then I'll handpick what is important to me. Then I can say, okay, this has got lots of medical information, which is of no relevance to me because I'm a financial institution. So I'm just going to pick up financial terms, credit cards, bank account information, loan history, account payment, element like that. So sorry for the long-winded answer, but yeah, without tools, you can do it. It'll take you a million years. With tools, takes you days.
Would you concur, guys? Would you ever try and take on a job without using some kind of?
I will certainly concur. It's about picking the right tool as well, because when people start out with data governance, they get a shoestring budget, and they default to an Excel spreadsheet, something that they're trying to get people away from, and yet they're using it themselves to populate a data dictionary, a business glossary, and master data management, all the tools that we talk about in terms of data governance in their arsenal that they're trying to do with their companies. But yet they're using like spreadsheets and lists and all sorts of things that are not automated, and yeah, it kind of does the job, but it's not really truly doing the job. So hence, picking the right tool, whether it's OneTrust or there's very many other tools there that I could promote. But I won't take away his thunder. But yeah, there are tools out there that can definitely help automate and make matters a lot more quicker.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it depends on your level of maturity is probably how I'd answer this question. If early on, don't think that the tool is the answer, because it's not. It's the accelerator. And in a large enterprise, as I said, you cannot do this really without it, because those spreadsheets will get massive. They will get huge, and they will just become part of the problem that you're trying to solve, and then you're in a whole loop anyway. But you don't pick a tool too early is the one piece of advice I think I would give, because you don't want to pick the wrong tool that's not right for your business.
Right, yes.
And it does depend on your budget, unfortunately, because I work with lots of networking groups, and some of the ones I participate in, there's loads of charities and universities and things in there, and they don't have, sadly, the money for great tools like size. They have to go with a slightly different solution, or they have to be very careful what they pick. And yeah, and also don't let your stakeholders think that the tool's the solution either, because it's not. It's the same as like you were talking about earlier, Tariq, that like AI and ML. Yeah, we all want to get there. We all want that fancy stuff. But if you don't get the foundations and the fundamentals right, you can't get there. And it's the same. Yes, you can have your lovely tool that will make your life really easy. It will, I promise, one day. But do the groundwork first. Do the foundations.
Yeah.
Win the people over.
Yeah.
If you lead with tech as the answer, then you're going to have to backpedal an awful lot, because it's really about the people and how they behave with the data, and if they agree to a scheme that you want to get going in terms of definitions and ownership and that kind of. That's actually the tech is the easy part. It's hard because it is complicated. There's migrations and history and legacy and all the stuff that goes with it. But you can do that because we've got brilliant people that know how to do that. It's changing the behaviors that get people to actually want to use new tools and new technologies. But you can't do it without people and their willingness to, to address that and I would say one other thing, as a consultant and even as a chief data officer, is get somebody to help you look at the capabilities that your company and your business processes actually need to operate. So because you can go out and pick any tool out here, and OneTrust is one of the great ones, but it may not be right for your business because it doesn't have the capabilities or things that you care about, or it's got a lot more than you need, and you want to find something that then scales to your organization. So you buy what's right for the time, you sequence the approach, you look at a holistic budget for that, and you grow over time. And you want to start with tools that are expandable and scalable, right? So you don't want to take of course you can always just use Excel because that's always expandable and scalable, right? We know that. I started my data dictionary in Excel many years ago. So that is a viable option, but it is no longer an accelerator. It's no longer the ways to get things done. But really, it's important to pick the right size and the right tool for your point in your maturity and your development cycle, and make sure that you can scale that over time. And I think today, with all of the technology and APIs and ways to connect modular pieces of equipment and data technologies, that is a much easier thing to do now than it was a long time, 10 years ago. So there are options, and you want to make sure you're studying those with sort of a neutral view to see what's best for you, not what somebody just told you is the right thing to have, at some point in time. Yeah.
Perfect. I'm going to come back to the title again, making the most of data governance. So what wins can people expect from a good data governance program? Don't kill me for using the word program. I'm going to go, good data governance program.
We're going to have to walk out again, Andy.
Yeah, we're going to have to.
Helen, what can people expect to be able to tell their senior management, having done a fantastic job with data governance?
Well, my first answer to this is don't call it a program or a
Exactly.
project. Please
Yes.
don't. You are never, ever done with this, as you and I were talking about earlier.
Exactly.
Data governance is for life, not just for Christmas. This is a puppy that you
Yes.
need to love and take care of. Because it is, and it's around, the wins are around kind of, there's different ways, like show them the wins, a bit like you were talking about, Jennifer, in terms of find a business problem and solve it and show how data governance solves that problem, because that will help you with the buy-in. But the wins are sort of, you will actually get value from your data. You will have an organization that cares. They will actually be able to see, when you've got data lineage and things in place, that, okay, if I don't do the data entry at this end right, poor finance all the way over here, because they always get stuck with the fuzzy end of the lollipop because they're the biggest consumers, they can actually do their reg report in 20 minutes rather than 6 days, which it might currently take them. And it's those kinds of things. You actually start realizing this cultural benefit and giving you that competitive edge. It will give you a competitive edge because there's only so long you can be lucky making decisions off the back of mediocre data, because eventually those will stack up and you will lose your edge.
No, that's absolutely right, Helen. It's like what you were saying earlier to myself, that you want to make your data happy. You don't want it to. You don't want your data crying. Because actually, it's as you said, it's not only getting that competitive edge. It's that we know that there are really good people out there who have really good business acumen that actually do go with their gut feel and they do produce results. But could you think how much more they could produce if it's backed up with data? If it's actually backed up with data, with the gut feel, oh my words, we might have another Mark Zuckerberg, we might have more billionaires and so on and so forth, because that's what it is. What we are trying to do is back up those business decisions that they are making. We want to prove that the decisions that they're making is correct, and that's the culture change. Yeah, it's having data as the foundation to back up any business decision that they will take.
I was going to go to Sai first, but if that's all right. So Sai, yeah. What can people expect from doing data governance right? How do you make the most of it? What are the advantages?
It's more like an open-ended question, and again, it's something that Jennifer kind of mentioned. First, understand what your requirements are, what your capabilities are, what kind of tool do you need, and to what level or what degree of governance do you want to add to it, and to what level of cataloging or classification you want to add, what level of retention you want to add, business domains, all these glossaries, data dictionaries, all the elements that come into play. So it's not like something like one T-shirt fits all kind of a thing. So you size it based on your requirement, you customize it based on your requirement. So you size based on what is required in your organization, for your organization. And then you go ahead and look at the tools and what is the capability of the tool. Is it like a single throat to choke, or are you going to knock on multiple doors whenever there is a need for you to be provided by some support or backed up by support? All these elements come into it. Especially from a data governance, there are two different elements that come into play. One, identifying all the information that you have. And then once you've identified, how can I make most out of it? If I'm finding incorrect information sitting on somebody's laptop or some network share or Excel sheet, for example, if somebody had a bad habit of writing credit card numbers as they spoke to their customers, and you find all these credit card numbers sitting in an Excel sheet, which they shouldn't be, actually, then how do you add more value to that? How do you correct that problem? How do you fix it? How do you add more ownership around it? How do you make data stewardship, business ownership, technical ownership into the play? And how do you stop it from making happen in the future? So you're putting an automation rule into place and all these elements. So that kind of builds your step-to-step gradual entity of going from 0 to 100.
And yeah, so Jen, sorry, what can you expect? What big wins if you've got anything that...
I'm going to go again beyond the data piece of it, because the big wins are really about tying them to your business objectives, whatever those are, whether it's in your financial report or your annual report or just on your PowerPoint pitch that your CEO or your leader shared. But it's about increasing income, usually, revenue, decreasing risk, and optimizing your cost structure. So if you can tie the work you're doing to an operational problem or a regulatory problem or something like that, that then impacts those basically three drivers of any good business, right? Those are sort of the objectives that you're looking at. Then you can expect that type of value from a data management, a data excellence, or a data governance, if you want to call it data governance, set of programs and activities that you have to do. So, I mean, I mentioned earlier I spent a lot of time in financial services. I was at GE Capital, and if anybody here worked for GE before, we're a big Six Sigma, lean, you know, we did a lot of process improvement. That's all I did before I did data. And data is a byproduct of the processes that you're operating in. And so you need to really just tie the processes to the data and make sure that those are, you have a clean process chain, well understood, simply defined, and people understand it. Same thing with the data supply chain, that it's well understood and it knows where it's going and how it's being used so that it actually can be used to create value for the company. And I think that's the aspiration of a data management team or a data excellence team or a data governance team. You can talk about the definitions and do all the technical, tactical work around that, and that is super important. But you lose your audience sometimes if you don't bring it to that level and help people understand that this is actually going to reduce risk if you're in financial services. So your report, your PRA report is going to be right, and you're not, or whatever, you're not going to get a capital charge or won't have to hold more capital. Or you won't have escapes leave your factory that could cause damage at a plant that you manufactured something for. I mean, these are things that actually mean something to your customers and to your company and start to create value. So I would bring it even above, you know, the team and building the team, and I agree with all that, but I really think if you want to get your company to switch gears and think about what this can do for them, it's about achieving the objectives that your company has set out there. So it might not be those three. Those are kind of the three that I go for all the time, but find what that is and find that sweet spot with your leader or your stakeholder or somebody who cares, and show them how what you can do will help them achieve that return or that on investment.
So I'm going to ask one final question before I'm going to ask if there's any questions from the audience. So start thinking if anybody wants to ask a question. So I'm going to ask it to you, Tariq, because I think you started touching on it.
Yes.
So what are the biggest challenges to making the most of data governance? I won't say program. Making the most of data governance. What's the biggest challenge faced by people in your position, or people who?
So in terms of data governance, there's normally, it comes into three areas. People, process, and technology. That's the trend that we've been speaking of today. And the number one biggest challenge, in my experience, humble experience, is actually people. Yeah, the people are quite key to drive the data, to make the data good. And as I said, as human beings, we're really, really creative. We really want, everybody that enters a job wants to do a good job. Yeah, they're not there to say that I'm just going to just really mess this data up because, I don't care. No, they're doing it because they want to try and bring value quickly, but they don't understand the consequences of what they do sometimes. Yeah, and which is why when you're trying to force change, or even, as Jen here, she's going to be talking about tomorrow in terms of us being therapists. Yeah, that's what we are. We are here to try and change people, trying to change the way of working, try to take them off that spreadsheet and follow the process because it is going to be better for them. But in some cases it's hard. So as an example, I work for a housing association, and we have people out there in the field that are fixing electric, they're doing plumbing, they're doing various bits and pieces. The last thing that in their mind is to try and fix a tap. But they're not going to think about the data. They're not. They want to fix that tap. But at the same time, we want to make it as easy for them as possible to capture what they do in their job, the type of taps they're using, etc., so that therefore we can then apply that against, some machine learning, advanced analytics and stuff like that, that could allow us to say, all right then, these sort of taps might be a cause of leakage in these sorts of blocks. So therefore we should build a program in order to change those taps because of the data that we have. But it's, as Jen said, it's about finding that sweet spot of understanding the business problem and understanding the business culture, but people is number one in order to drive this through.
Yes, 100%. The people will be your greatest ally and your greatest challenge all at the same time. The other biggest challenge is maintaining stakeholder enthusiasm and buy-in, I would say as well, because it's not a program.
Yes.
Sorry, I keep bringing this up. It's not a program. I mean, one of the things we do at Monzo is we don't think of data governance and the sort of architectural parts of data governance things that we put in place. They are not projects that are done, dusted, fine. They're done. They're products. We think of them like we do like any of the products that we give to the customers. The difference is that our customers are internal Monzonos. But the framing is important, and I would encourage you to think about the language and the words that you use. Because if you talk about a product, people automatically think, okay, well that's going to be there forever. We're going to need to maintain it. We're going to need to look after it. We're going to have to actually invest in that continuously forever. Whereas if you just think of it as a project, it's done, it's dusted, you move on, and then the people who were working on it get taken off onto other things. No, you need to do this right, and you need to be the people who look after and maintain these products, like the data engineers or the analytics engineers or the data governance people. It depends how your company sets it up. They need to be proud of the fact that they are delivering a good product to their customer, even though that's only an internal person. But they need to be proud of that, and that. So I would encourage the thinking around the language because it will help. And the stakeholder expectation management is also important because they're not going to get there quickly. I mean, the kind of things you can do are like data capability maturity assessments. These usually come in sort of 5 levels. There's chaotic, which is always my favorite label, chaotic, reactive, stable, proactive, and predictive. And everybody's on a different point. But the classic example is that to go between one level within these 5, it'll take you 18 to 24 months of consistent effort and consistent stakeholder buy-in. So this is not going to be done in 6 months. This is for the long haul. The puppy is for life. Yes. And even putting the puppy in place is going to take a while.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so... well, should we go to Jen and then final word?
Sure, I'll just add one because I totally agree with the people thing. I mean, every data problem is a people problem in disguise, to be honest. This is how I see it. It really does take a lot of people to make that happen. But how about funding? Anybody have a problem ever getting funding for their projects? That's another. We're not going to give you the laundry list of how hard it is to do because it really is a valuable thing to work on. But the BAU aspect, what you're just describing, Helen, has always been a challenge because the people think of it as a program and then they forget that when the program's done, you actually have to keep some of that funding to keep the BAU going. And that focus of making sure when you start a program that it actually has a tail and funding for that tail so that you can have a standardized program process to keep this going in the long run. That is a big challenge that I would keep in the forefront if you're kickstarting a project, because people just think it's over and done. So, and making sure people, like, you know, if you're asking for money to buy a tool and buy the people and the capabilities, make sure you're topping that off with like 30% more for the BAU process that you're going to have after that, because otherwise it'll be done and you'll be like, your budget's gone, now what do I do? Either that or you've got to bake it into somebody else's job, and that's also a hard thing to do. So you don't really want to do that. So.
And yeah,
and you, Sai?
I'll echo what the panel already said. Each one of them literally hit it on the hammer, or
on the head.
Hit the nail with the hammer. Again, the only thing I can add is the pillars of data governance, how they come into play, and how you as an organization would contribute towards it. And of course, as Jennifer said, always ensure that you have enough budget, or you're allocating the budget. Think about all these elements. Some things that we do, again, I don't want to really try to sell OneTrust here, but as a generalist comment, what I would say is look for products which are more like a buffet system. So pay as much as you eat. So if we do that, we sell as per module. So look at always into these kind of things, double click into them, ensure that you're seeing what your future forecasting is from a data perspective and data governance perspective. Once you understand all this, then everything else will fall into its place. So I'll end with a quote, if I may, which was said by James Bond. If you always know your exit plan, everything else will fall into its place. So don't think about stealing the diamond. Think about how do you get out after you stealing the diamond. Right, that's the plan it should be. So I'll hand it over to you, Helen.
Thank you very much. Well, I said I was going to open it up for questions. Is there any questions from the audience? Okay, have we got a mic over here? Now, this is going to be an interesting one while I think about it. So I think what I'm going to have to do,
there's maybe a hand mic,
is you talk into the mic, I listen on the microphone. Everyone will be able to hear the question apart from these guys.
We're going to guess.
Unless you shout.
Hey, 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 hey. Testing.
Yeah.
Hello there. Whenever I see a job description that, as one of the skills, says you must be able...
I can't hear it. Sorry. Oh, okay, sorry. There we go. Sorry, yeah. Start again. Sorry.
Whenever I see a job description that says, you know, one of the responsibilities, you must be good at Microsoft Office, I think, oh dear, there's an organisation in data governance Stone Age. What do the panel think? If I am one of those Stone Age employees and I go through the transposition and I'm now in a modern, fully fledged data governance organisation, what is that? What's the experience that I've gone through? What have I learned? What can I now do?
Perfect. Okay, so a lot of the if someone's starting point is dealing with Microsoft Office tools, Excel, you know, all that sort of point, and then they move, they transform, or they move to the company they're working for transforms, or they move to a company that is set up in a way that we've been talking about, new age tools, new age processes, that kind of thing. What's that journey like for somebody, and what can people learn from it? Apologies, I know that was a bit of a paraphrase.
Okay, so when you're starting out from somewhere that's really in ground zero, whereby you are using Microsoft products like Excel, PowerPoint, Word, and so on and so forth, and you're trying to bring data governance in, again, it's what Jen was speaking, and Helen and everyone else was speaking about before. It's the journey for that all starts off, you know, from the business problem that you're trying to solve. Yeah, and then therefore, if you're trying to solve that business problem, it might not necessarily be a tool that will solve that problem, but maybe a process or a culture change that will make that biggest impact. And then therefore, you can then go from that point of view first, and then bring the tools later on. Yes, tools are very important, as we said, and we're trying, and as much as possible, we're not trying to drive things through Excel spreadsheet when we're doing things like data governance. But you have to start somewhere. Yeah, and we have to understand about budget and everything else. But when we're starting on this journey, and whichever data governance journey, and as Helen described it before, in terms of like whether you're chaotic or you're at the predictive level, You just need to understand what the business problems are and how the data is, whether it's affecting that business problem or not, and then taking your kind of like steps from there. I hope that answers the question. But Helen and Jen, we got.
Well, I was actually gonna say to Sai, because you might actually deal with people.
Yep.
Throw them into a solutions state where what they're dealing with is far more complex than perhaps what they're dealing with. How
Absolutely.
do people adjust?
So if we are talking about a few things that come into the play here, if it's actually a migration or a transition that's happening from different set of tools to a different set of tools, and in the last few years we have seen a great percentage of migration happening from on-prem to off-prem or off-prem to cloud storage, right? So when technology is moving or evolving or upgrading, of course everybody wants to follow it. In these kind of scenarios, especially with OneTrust, it's pretty easy for us. It's a piece of cake or cakewalk or walk in the park, because we just tend to scan the new transitioned data source. In this case, if you are scanning all your Microsoft SQL databases, for example, and you transition into a cloud structure or cloud storage, then we are simply adding one more element and we are scanning your cloud storage now. So that's from a technical standpoint. And as Tariq said, from a business standpoint, you have to ensure that all this transition is still effectively ticking all the boxes that you want to see from a governance standpoint. You need to focus on that element as well. So from a technical standpoint and a business standpoint, there are two different elements. Technical, yes, we can easily tick it. Business, it's something that you can future forecast and then tick that element.
Is there any other questions? So we've got one at the front here. Yeah, two at the front here. So, yeah.
I don't think
Here we go. Oh, that's great. It's all right. We've all got headphones now, so
Yeah.
ask the question and we'll all be able to hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ah, brilliant. Okay.
Yeah, I have this question for Helen. So I was waiting for you to wear it. So basically, how do you keep the stakeholders interested and enthusiastic?
Oh, okay.
Chocolate.
Yeah, bribery plays a part. It very much depends on your personal style, but I mean, this is also why, sorry, slightly changing tack. This is why the cultural element is quite hard, because it's unique. I always say, imagine your company as an architectural model. Data governance is the duvet going over the top of it, because it will keep everything safe and warm, and it's molding to the shape of the structure that it's going over the top as. So you've got to go with what would work in your company. I mean, okay, I work for a tech company. I can do really silly things to keep people involved. My aim is to one day get a soft toy made that will be given as a prize. You have no idea the lengths people at Monzo go to get the hot chip versions of our card that is made into a plushie. So it depends what works in your company, but you've got to kind of try it a lot of different ways. You think of all the different entry points that this could happen in. Like in a previous one, I've had data governance put into everybody's job descriptions, for example. So therefore it gets baked into the performance management cycle, so people are given the time to do it that they need to, because the managers then are performance managing people against this. Or don't let people make a change to a data model if the data owner field is blank. Make them add that tag. Don't let them put the pull request and commit that data until that happens. So, as I say, a model I can be as silly as I want, and it's also about continually communicating and engaging with a lot of them, saying, look, I want to help you solve this problem, this is what we're doing, this is where we're at, and being honest and realistic with where you are with different things. And don't overpromise as well. That's where I went back to the expectation management earlier, because if you overpromise and then you're constantly under-delivering, you're not going to be their favorite people.
And do we have a couple more questions?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, we've got one at the back. Wait, hang on.
Hi, good evening everyone. My question would be, what are the 3 key elements of data governance? Like, as we are having many tools, as I'm seeing now, what would be the proper 3 key elements as per your experience would be useful for the data governance? Because although we have many tools...
do you hear that okay? I think Tariq, I think
Yeah.
this is a good jumping off point for you. to
Sorry,
start, I
I'll
think.
just continue.
Three basics.
Yeah, sure. So the three basics that are people, process, and technology. Those are the three basics of data governance. You need to look at the people element, understanding the culture, see what works, as Helen says, being that comfort blanket for people. You have to look at process to make sure that the process is optimum for the data, not for what's working for them, but for the data itself, and having that buy-in, which come back to people. And then afterwards, then you have the technology. The technology is the one that will make things happen faster and make things happen in an automated way. Yeah. So if you look at it from those three perspectives, you should be in the right path for getting the right data and not making your data cry, as Helen would say.
Just to continue,
Right.
actually.
So I know we have a couple more questions. I'm going to suggest that questions, if guys don't mind staying here for just a tiny weeny bit for people to come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because I know that there's a lot going on the floor, and I think we've exceeded our time as per the back. But firstly, I would just like to extend a massive thanks and congratulations for doing such a wonderful job today. It's been a great panel. It's been great to listen to. Great to be part of.
If you want to, also tomorrow there's some events as well for data management and data governance. So come check out those events as well.
Yeah.
In this
Obviously,
theater,
there's
lot
a
going on.
full program of data governance in here tomorrow.
Yep. I'm speaking.
Including Jen?
Yep,
Yes.
at lunchtime if you're not
Including
asleep
Jen?
after your
Including
lunch.
Sai.
And
Yes,
Sai here,
Sai,
so
yes.
come back and chat with
Sai
us.
again.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you're in here, you're both in here around 12
I'm here
o'clock?
at noon.
I'm at 10:40.
10:40.
10:40, okay.
So don't make sure you don't miss another chance to catch up with these two. When you go outside, it's a refreshment hour. If you look at a stand, it's got a red balloon. It'll be serving drinks. So there's a little tip for you from there. I knew I'd bring value to this panel at some point. There you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
You've been
everyone.
great. Thank you.
Bye.